Elena Rivera moved quietly through the ballroom, gathering crystal flutes and lipstick-smudged napkins like she'd been born invisible. The Whitmore estate in Coral Gables glowed like a movie set. Gold chandeliers, a mirrored dance floor, a live jazz trio in the corner. But nobody saw the woman in the black housekeeping polo and scuffed sneakers. Not until the guest of honor noticed her. "Hey, you!" barked Rick Monroe, Miami real estate king and chronic headline. "Housekeeping! Come here!" Heads turned, phones tilted, hungry for a clip. Elena froze, clutching a tray to her chest. The man had the kind of smile that felt like a dare. Rick dragged a leather chair to a marble-topped table where a carved ivory chess set waited like decor. "Let's see if you know how to do anything besides mop," he said, tapping the white queen. $10,000 if you beat me. If you lose, you finish the night scrubbing floors right here." A few guests laughed. One dude pantomimed sweeping. The sound went through Elena like a blade. She set the tray down, hands still damp from sanitizer, and looked at the board. She'd played on cardboard and bottle caps as a kid in Little Havana, in the church rec room when the AC barely worked. She hadn't touched a fancy set like this in her life. "Sir, I'm on shift," she said softly. John, the security guard near the archway, stepped forward, sympathetic. "Mr. Monroe, she can't—" Rick lifted a palm. "Easy. It's a party. Let's give her a moment in the spotlight." He yanked the chair out an inch farther, a command masquerading as generosity. "Sit." Elena sat. She reached for the king's pawn, nudged it 2 squares with a clean, precise touch, and withdrew her hand. The room changed temperature. Laughter thinned into silence, the way a wave draws back before it breaks. Rick's smirk twitched. "Cute," he said, pushing a knight with bravado. "For someone who cleans bathrooms." Elena didn't answer. She adjusted in her seat, smoothed the polo over her ribs, and let her breathing settle. The board was a neighborhood. She knew its alleys and trapdoors. She developed a knight, then a bishop, like opening windows in a hot room. Rick lunged with his queen, hungry for a quick kill. Elena smiled, barely, and built a small, solid house of moves. Castle short, control the center, let him overextend. Mark, Rick's loudest friend, chuckled too hard. "No way she knows theory." Sophie Whitmore, blue dress, sharp eyes, watched more closely. "She's not guessing," she murmured. "Look at her structure." Rick banged a palm on the table after blundering an early bishop. "Lucky shot," he snapped, louder than he meant. Sweat haloed his temples. The jazz trio faltered, then kept playing. "Who are you?" Rick demanded. Sarcasm curled around the words. Elena kept her gaze down, measuring her next move like a seamstress measuring cloth. "Elena Rivera," she said. "Grew up off Calle Ocho. There's a church 2 blocks from our old duplex. The pastor ran a chess night. At 15, I won the South Florida Community Tournament." A thin man near the bar lifted his glasses. "I remember that," he said to no one and everyone. "Rivera. 5 straight wins." The energy shifted, almost imperceptibly, but Elena felt it in her bones the way you feel a storm before thunder. She traded a pawn to open a file, then slipped a rook behind it. Rick blustered, posture inflated, voice bouncing off marble. "Everyone relax," he chortled. "I've paid coaches more than she makes in a year." He shoved a pawn. She snapped it off the board and controlled the square it left behind, the way her father taught her on a peeling table under a buzzing kitchen light. Don't fight where he shouts. Fight where he forgets to look. Rick reached too far. His queen flared, grand and reckless. Elena's bishop drew a long diagonal like a line of writing across a page, and suddenly the queen had no safe square. Gasps cracked the quiet. Rick's jaw locked. "You're kidding me," he said. But the piece was gone. Elena placed it beside the board. No victory grin, just calm. "It's not over," Rick declared, voice cracking toward a boy who never learned the word no. He leaned in, lowered his tone so only nearby guests could hear. "You work for me. Keep playing and you won't tomorrow." Elena lifted her eyes for the first time and met his stare. "You've already said enough, sir." A few people clapped. Small, nervous. Mr. Whitmore himself drifted closer, intrigued. Mark hovered and muttered lines. John stood behind Elena now, awkward and ashamed. Sophie edged nearer, whispering, "You got this." Rick, cornered by silence, doubled the stakes as if money could bully the truth. "Make it 50. Lose and you apologize on your knees. Win, you take the cash." Elena heard her father as clearly as if he were seated at her shoulder. "Think 3 moves ahead, Mija. Patience is power." She inhaled through her nose, slow and steady. "Okay," she said. Phones tilted higher. Someone shushed the band. Rick shoved a rook with the swagger of a man who believes the world will tilt to spare him. Elena loosened the position with a quiet pawn move that looked like nothing, until everything around it began to lean her way. "Play faster," Rick taunted, tapping the table. "Or are you scared?" Elena's hand hovered, then settled the knight into a square that knit her pieces together like fingers interlacing. A couple of guests who actually knew chess exhaled. Sophie whispered, almost giddy, "He doesn't see it." Rick grinned wide, sensing momentum where there was none. He slammed his next move, rattling crystal. Elena's reply was small and merciless. A rook slid to the open file, the kind of move that doesn't announce itself. It arrives. "Wait," Rick muttered, scanning. His confidence leaked. The board, bright under chandelier light, had become a courtroom, and he was discovering he wasn't the judge. Elena touched her queen, then paused, reading the room, the lines, the man across from her. She let the piece go, sat back, and watched him flail for an exit that didn't exist. "Move!" he snapped. She reached forward, lifted the queen, and set it down with a soft click that sounded somehow like a verdict. The guests leaned in as one, breath held over glass and gold. Rick blinked twice, throat bobbing. "Your move," Elena said. And that was when the first person in the room realized what she'd just built. A trap with only one way out, straight into checkmate, 3 moves away. Elena didn't look up. She let the silence do the heavy lifting while Rick Monroe stared at the board like it had betrayed him. Somewhere behind the ring of guests, a phone chimed and was instantly muted. Crystal stems ticked as people set their drinks down without taking their eyes off the pieces. Rick forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Cute trick. He flicked a pawn with the back of his finger, then caught himself and sat taller. "You know what? Let's make this worth your time." He raised his voice for the room. $100,000 if you win. If you lose, you apologize on your knees. We post it. A buzz ran through the ballroom. Mr. Whitmore's brows pinched. Sophie shot him a look that said, "Don't." He didn't catch it, or chose not to. John, the guard, shifted closer to Elena's shoulder, almost protective now. "Sir, this is—" "Quiet, John," Rick snapped, eyes still on Elena. "She wants to be in the spotlight? Here it is." Elena breathed in, slow. The number did a small, dizzy circle in her head. Rent, medical bills, the busted AC in her mother's apartment. Then it settled. Money was noise. The board was signal. "I accept," she said. A ripple of "oh dang" moved through the crowd. Rick smirked, mistaking courage for naivete. He moved fast, trying to blow open the position. Elena's reply was a quiet shepherd's nudge, a pawn that looked harmless until its shadow touched 3 important squares. "Play faster," Rick taunted. "My game doesn't live on speed," she said, eyes still on the lines. "It lives on patience." Mark snorted. "This isn't a TED Talk." Sophie stepped nearer, low enough for Elena alone. "He's rattled. Don't let him set your tempo." Elena's hands remembered plastic bottle caps on a chipped table, her father's voice in a kitchen where the fan was louder than the TV. "Think 3 moves ahead, mija. People who swing hardest are easiest to see coming." She slid a rook to the open file she'd built 5 turns ago. It looked like housekeeping, tidying a line. It was a blade. Rick leaned over, hunting tactics, missing strategy. "You're stalling. You're shouting," she said softly, and lifted a knight to a square that seemed ordinary until everyone with chess in their bones inhaled at once. "Whoa," someone murmured. Rick tried to barrel through, flashing his queen across the board like a badge. Elena's bishop answered from a long diagonal, 1 clean sentence from across the room. The queen froze. Rick's fingers hovered above it, then jerked back. He felt the trap and didn't know its name. "Is she winning?" a woman whispered. "She's better," said the thin man with glasses. "Winning is what the position decides later." Rick's smile tore a little at the edges. He straightened, dropped his voice so only Elena could hear. "Walk away now and you keep your job." Elena didn't blink. "Sir, you didn't bring me here to walk away." He made a show of checking his watch, of being bored. He pushed a pawn to create space, because that's what his coach had once said in a lesson he half listened to. The move opened a door he didn't see. Elena stepped through it, trading minor pieces with a rhythm that wrung the oxygen from his plans. When the dust cleared, her pieces hummed in harmony, and his were coughing in corners. Sophie's mouth tilted into a grin. "He's getting squeezed." "Illegal move," Mark barked suddenly, trying anything. "No," said Mr. Whitmore, leaning in. "It's legal, and it's good." Rick blew air through his cheeks, angry and red. "I've beaten real players. You? You scrub grout." Elena's voice was level. "I scrub floors so my mother's rent is paid. I play this game because my father taught me dignity is a line you defend with your life." A hush rolled outward. For a heartbeat, the ballroom wasn't rich or poor. It was human. Rick lunged. He threw a rook forward, hoping violence could pass for vision. Elena answered with a small sacrifice, 1 pawn, nothing flashy, to crack the cover around his king. The room hummed again. Even John leaned in, big hands on the back of Elena's chair, eyes flicking like he could see it now too. Rick's queen searched for counterplay and found mirrors. Elena's pieces tightened, her rook stitching the open file to her queen like a seam. The king on the far side of the board took 1 shuffling step, the first sign of fear in a man who thought he couldn't be touched. Sophie exhaled. "He's in a net." Rick felt it. He reached for bravado. "Double or nothing," he blurted. 200,000. "Enough," Mr. Whitmore said, voice carrying the authority of someone who actually owned the house. "Play the game, Rick." "Fine." Rick spat and moved, too fast, too loud, pushing a pawn that created exactly 1 square for his king and surrendered 3 others. Elena didn't rush. She lifted her queen, set it down with a tiny click that carried farther than any toast. Her knight hopped to its new home. The rook slid like a door locking. The diagonal bishop returned to the story it had been writing since the opening. The board spoke in chorus. Rick looked up, finally, from the pieces to the woman across from him. For the first time all night, he really saw her. Not the polo or the scuffed sneakers, but the mind that had built a quiet, inevitable future and waited for him to walk into it. "What is this?" he whispered. Elena's answer was simple. "Check." Gasps. A champagne flute kissed marble and rattled. Rick shoved his king to its only square, breath sharp. Elena reached for her rook, stopped, and lifted her eyes to Rick's, holding his gaze as she prepared to deliver the next move, the one everyone in the room would remember, when a new voice cut through the silence behind her. "Mr. Monroe, before you continue, you should know your live stream just hit 50,000 viewers. It is the kind of silence that turns a ballroom into a courtroom." Heads swivel toward the entryway. A young tech in a headset, Whitmore's event producer, stands with a tablet raised like a warrant. "It's everywhere," she says, breathless. "Instagram Live, TikTok mirrors, hashtags trending. People are screen recording. You're viral, Mr. Monroe." Rick blinks, then pastes on a TV smile. "Good," he booms, too loud. "Let them see excellence." "No," the producer says, voice flat. "They're not cheering you." A few guests avert their eyes. Sophie doesn't. She looks at Rick like a surgeon examining a bad scan. Mr. Whitmore steps forward, voice ironed and crisp. "Since we're apparently broadcasting to half the city, we'll do this properly." He nods to John. "Clock." John hustles out and returns with a small digital chess clock from the study. He sets it by the board. 10 minutes each, Whitmore says. "Fair, clean, no coaching." His gaze pins Mark, who lifts his hands like a guilty choir boy. "And no threats," Whitmore adds, letting the word hang where everyone can see it. Rick bristles. "Whose house is this?" "Mine," Whitmore says without raising his volume. The room accepts the point like gravity. Elena places her fingertips on the table to still the tiny tremor running through them. Viral. The word should scare her. It doesn't. She pictures bottle caps, a summer box fan, her father's forearms as he scrubbed a counter after closing at the diner. Think 3 moves ahead and 1 move kind. She taps the clock. Rick's time starts. He lunges, trying to change the conversation on the board the way he does in meetings. Elena answers with a rook lift, quiet as breath. The net tightens. The chat on the producer's tablet scrolls like rain. Little hearts, chess emojis, strangers typing her name. Sophie leans just close enough to whisper, "We've got you." Elena doesn't look up, but something in her spine straightens. "Illegal capture," Mark blurts again, a reflex now. "Legal," says the man with glasses, Arturo, without looking away. "And elegant." Rick stares at the clock, then at the queen he's boxed into a bad marriage. He decides to talk instead of think. "You know I fund 3 community centers?" he says loudly, eyes on the guests, not the pieces. "I hire, I give back." Elena moves her bishop along the long diagonal it's owned since the opening. "Giving isn't owning," she says softly, "and respect isn't a tax write-off." A ripple of "oh" fired through the circle. Rick's jaw ticks. He shoves a pawn to make luft for his king. It creates exactly 1 square and 3 new problems. Elena's knight hops. 1 clean L that makes 2 people clap before they remember this isn't a theater. "Explain the plan," Whitmore says to no one in particular, professorial. Arturo obliges. She's trading surface threats for structural damage. He can't coordinate. Watch the rook. Rick hears "watch the rook" and panics about everything else. He slashes with his queen, trying for perpetual check. Elena's king takes a small walk behind a wall of pawns she arranged on purpose 6 turns ago. The queen loses teeth. The clock ticks. A drop of sweat slides from Rick's temple into his collar. Double or nothing, he tries again, voice cracking. 200? Play, Whitmore says. The word lands like a gavel. Rick plays, badly. Elena slides her rook to the 7th rank. The room inhales. That sound again, the little vacuum when inevitability walks in. Rick swipes at the board aura, finds nothing concrete to hit. He looks up at Elena, and for a second she sees a person, not a villain. A boy who was told every room had a throne if he barked loud enough. He bares his teeth. When this is over, you're done in this town. Elena's hand pauses above her queen. She doesn't take the bait. Sir, she says, meeting his eyes, I clean tables with people who tipped in quarters. This town and I will be fine. She plays the quietest move on the board. Her pawn shuffles, unlocking a file that has been padlocked since the first handshake. Arturo's eyebrows jump. Sophie bites back a grin. John, behind her chair, whispers, Nice. Clock, Whitmore reminds gently. Rick slaps his side of it like it offended him. He glares at the producer. Read the comments. She doesn't. They're not the ones moving pieces, she says. He lunges again. Anything to feel powerful. His rook skitters into a trap that looks like freedom. Elena takes with tempo, then threads her queen behind the rook like a needle through cloth. The board becomes a sentence with only one ending. The room can read. Is that? Someone starts. Not yet, Arturo says, eyes bright. But there's only one road left. Rick's breath comes shallow. He pushes his king to the square he carved earlier. Elena taps her clock and, with the tiniest smile, slides her rook across the back rank. Check. Gasps ricochet off crystal. Rick flails, interposes his last knight. Elena takes it. Check again. He throws a pawn into the fire. She ignores it and tightens the net. The king has 2 legal moves. Both are wrong. Rick's eyes dart to the doors, like maybe there's another exit if he looks hard enough. His phone vibrates. He doesn't touch it. He moves his king to the corner, the loneliest square on the board. Elena's voice is barely above a whisper, but it reaches every wall. My father used to say the board is honest when people aren't. She lifts her queen and sets it down with that small, inevitable click beside her rook. The geometry is final. Even the chandeliers seem to lean closer. Say it, Sophie breathes, almost laughing, almost crying. Elena meets Rick's stare, not cruel, not smug, just clear. Checkmate. The room detonates. Applause, shouts, a few stunned laughs as people realize they've been holding their breath for minutes. The clock keeps ticking out of habit. Rick doesn't move. His face drains, then floods, then drains again. He looks at the producer's tablet. The comments are a waterfall. Whitmore raises a hand, not to quiet the room, but to frame the moment. Mr. Monroe, he says evenly, you named the stakes. Pay the woman. Rick blinks like he didn't hear English. This wasn't, he starts. Arturo steps forward, voice carrying. It was clean. It was public. It was fair. Sophie folds her arms. And it was filmed. John shifts, and for a heartbeat, Rick considers bluster. Then the viral tide hits him in the sternum. He reaches for his phone with a shaking hand. The ballroom hushes, waiting to see whether a man who thought money could buy respect understands that tonight, respect is the only currency left that can buy him time. It is the hush right before a verdict, the kind that makes crystal and chandeliers feel like microphones. Rick stares at the board, then at his phone, then at the semicircle of faces he once assumed would always clap on cue. No one moves. Even the clock seems embarrassed to keep ticking. Mr. Whitmore doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. "You set the wager, Mr. Monroe. $100,000. Please transfer it to Miss Vargas. Now." Rick's laugh is brittle. "You think I keep that kind of cash in my pocket?" "Wire it," Whitmore replies. "My house, my rules." The event producer tilts her tablet so everyone can see the live stream still rolling. Comments flood by. Checkmate emojis. Pay up. Queen takes the board. Rick swallows, thumbs trembling as he opens his banking app. The room leans in without moving. "Recipient name?" he mutters. Elena doesn't flinch. "Elena Vargas." She recites her routing and account number from memory, steady as a metronome. Sophie watches Rick enter the figures, then glances to John. He nods, already pinging the Wi-Fi router, already making sure there's zero excuse. Rick hesitates on the final screen, hunting for a loophole that isn't there. His jaw locks. He taps send. A breath later, Elena's old phone, cracked screen, thrift store case, buzzes in her pocket. She pulls it out, eyes skimming the text. Incoming transfer, $100,000. For a split second, every version of her life lines up. The bottle cap boards, the double shifts, the bus rides, and then they click into a single, quiet yes. Arturo clears his throat. "Not charity," he says to the room. "Payment for mastery." Applause detonates. Some guests cheer full-throated. Others clap like they're grateful to be on the right side of history at last. Rick tries to speak over it. "This was a circus. She hustled." "Enough," Whitmore says, and the applause thins to silence on command. "You humiliated an employee in my home, threatened her livelihood, and then lost. Cleanly. You are no longer welcome at my events." He gestures toward the doors. Two security staff step forward, not touching Rick, just being there. Color drains from Rick's face. He looks for Mark. Mark studies the carpet. He looks for anyone. Eyes dodge. Phones rise. Power, he realizes, doesn't float in the air. It lives in the way a room looks at you. And this room is done. Sophie turns to Elena, softer now. "You okay?" Elena sets the captured king upright beside the board, a small act of housekeeping. "I will be." Whitmore addresses her, formality melting at the edges. "Ms. Vargas, I owe you more than an apology." He gestures toward the Steinway against the far wall, to the gallery upstairs. This house hosts city youth concerts, book nights, neighborhood panels, but it's always felt like we were missing a center. If you're willing, I'd like to hire you to curate our community chess and strategy program. Paid. Staff, budget, your call. A murmur ripples. It's the sound of a new story breaking open. Elena blinks. "Sir, I say yes." Sophie laughs through tears. "Please, for all of us." Elena takes a breath that feels like the first one after a long swim. "Yes, on one condition." Whitmore smiles. "Name it." "We open the doors wider," she says. "Scholarships. Saturday buses from neighborhoods that never get invited to rooms like this. And we don't just teach chess. We teach how to think 3 moves ahead, on paper, on job applications, in life." Arturo's grin is pure pride. A school of the mind. Whitmore extends his hand. "Done." They shake. Phones catch the moment. But it doesn't feel like content. It feels like infrastructure, the kind you can build a ladder on. Rick scrapes back his chair. You think you've won something permanent? He spits, voice ragged. I make calls. I end careers. Not tonight, Sophie says, stepping between him and Elena without drama. Tonight you just made a donation. Laughter, honest and a little mean, rolls through the circle. Rick flinches. He starts toward the door. At the threshold he turns, fishing for a last blade to throw. Elena meets his eyes. She doesn't gloat. Sir, she says evenly, money moves fast. So does reputation. Only one of them returns when you lose it. He leaves. The room exhales. The producer ends the stream. John resets the pieces, then pushes one across the felt to Elena, the toppled king. Souvenir? She shakes her head and nudges the humble pawn instead. This one did the work. A caterer who watched the whole thing fights back tears. Ms. Vargas, my little brother loves chess, never had anyone to teach him. Bring him Saturday, Elena says. Open play, no dress code. Sophie squeezes her shoulder. We'll need flyers, a website, sponsors. I know a printer, John offers, and a church with a gym if we overflow. Arturo tilts his head, eyes flicking to the grand staircase. And I know a tournament director who owes me a favor. For once, Elena lets herself smile without apologizing. She pockets the pawn. The applause rises again, warmer, rounder, almost like a welcome. On her phone, the transfer notification sits above a grocery app and a reminder to pay the bus pass. The number is outrageous, but the feeling isn't the money. It's possibility. Whitmore clinks a glass. To the woman who reminded us that brilliance wears every uniform, he says, and to a city that will think sharper because she sat at our table. Glasses lift. Elena doesn't have one, so she raises the pawn. The room laughs and copies her, crystal gleaming, tiny plastic imagined. For a beat, opulence and grit rhyme. Then Sophie's smile falters. Her gaze ticks to the vestibule, where two suited men have just stepped in. Not security, not waitstaff, another kind of presence entirely. She leans close, whispering so only Elena can hear. Don't panic, Sophie says, heartbeat in her voice. But Rick didn't leave alone. It lands like a draft of cold air, the way the two men pause in the archway, scanning the room as if counting witnesses. Not security, not guests. Corporate tidy, navy suits, discreet earpieces, steel briefcases. The applause stutters into a hush that feels staged, but isn't. Sophie edges closer to Elena. Crisis PR, she murmurs. Or lawyers. Mr. Whitmore steps forward, host voice on. Can I help you, gentlemen? The taller one offers a card without fully smiling. Graham Cordell, counsel. This is Mr. Hale. We represent Monroe Holdings. He doesn't say Rick's name like a person. He says it like a brand. We're here regarding a defamation risk. A flicker passes through the crowd. Phones resurface. Thumbs hover. Elena stays by the board, one hand on the pawn in her pocket like it's a small anchor. Cordell smooths a document against a silver tray, as if he expects champagne to arrive for his signature. Ms. Vargas, congratulations on your result. Before tonight's content proliferates unchecked, my client requires a corrective statement. He taps the page. A simple clarification that the game was recreational, that no conclusions should be drawn as to Mr. Monroe's character or business acumen, and that any prior allegations expressed in this room are retracted. In exchange, Monroe Holdings will donate an additional $50,000 to any charity you select. Sophie's laugh is soft and disbelieving. You're trying to buy back dignity wholesale? It's a standard mitigation, Cordell says mildly. No winners or losers in the press. Only perspectives. Whitmore's jaw sets. There were winners and losers, he says. We all saw it. Hale opens the briefcase. 2 printed statements, 2 pens, a portable scanner. We strongly advise prompt signatures. Viral windows are measured in minutes. Arturo folds his arms. Viral windows are measured in memory. Tonight isn't evaporating. Elena glances at the paper. The language is varnished. Regret any misunderstanding. Purely entertainment. No disparagement. It isn't just a gag order. It's an eraser. May I see your card? She asks, and when Cordell hands it over, she turns it between her fingers like a puzzle piece. You got here fast. We were already en route, he says, a touch of pride leaking through. Proactive counsel. Sophie lowers her voice. You don't owe them a syllable. Elena breathes in, slow and steady the way her father taught her when a position looked complicated. You don't rush. You look for the line. I'll make a statement, she says. Sophie's head snaps toward her. Elena, it's okay, Elena whispers, then looks up at Cordell. I want the mic. Whitmore nods once to the AV tech. A handheld appears. The live stream is already back on. Elena steps beside the board, the chandelier light catching the cracks in her phone's screen, as if to say we came from somewhere true. Good evening, she begins, voice carrying without strain. Counsel for Mr. Monroe has asked me to clarify what happened here. Cordell's smile returns, faintly victorious. Here's my clarification, Elena continues. I was called out, in uniform, to be laughed at. I was threatened with my job. I was told I didn't belong at this table. And then we played. On a fair board. With fair pieces. In front of all of you. I won. A low, grateful sound moves through the room. I don't need Mr. Monroe's money to call that what it was, she says. I don't need anyone's permission to tell the truth. But I will gladly accept additional donations, not to silence me, but to fund the kids who will sit at these tables next. If Monroe Holdings wants to give $50,000, they can wire it to the 3 Moves Ahead program we're building with Mr. Whitmore. And if they don't, we'll build it anyway. Hale shifts. Cordell's eyes flatten. The offer just turned into a dare. Elena hands the mic back. That's my statement. Applause swells, not rowdy, resolute. Whitmore turns to Cordell. You heard her. Cordell recovers with a corporate sigh. Ms. Vargas, your bravery is admirable. But please understand, public narratives cut both ways. Mr. Monroe's reputation is a substantial asset. If you, or this venue, continue to disseminate injurious commentary, we will pursue remedies. Sophie steps in. Like when your client threatened to blacklist an hourly worker on camera, guess who else has remedies? John lifts his phone. Screenshots secured. Cloud backups live. Counsel, you walked into the wrong endgame. For the first time, Cordell looks at the circle of staff. The caterer with tears still drying. The guard Juan standing a little taller. The AV tech with the stream key. And seems to understand that power has shifted platforms. He closes the briefcase. We'll be in touch. Whitmore gestures toward the door. Please do, through my counsel. They leave under a canopy of silence that isn't fear. It's dismissal. When the doors settle, the room exhales as one organism. Elena's knees wobble, adrenaline finally billing its fee. Sophie catches her. You were perfect, Sophie says. I was about to faint on your behalf. Elena laughs, shaky and real. Me too. Arturo taps the board. That, my dear, was a second checkmate. Whitmore faces the guests. You heard, Ms. Vargas? We're launching 3 moves ahead. Saturday buses, open tables, scholarships, the works. He raises his glass. Whether or not a certain company donates. Pledges start rolling in the old-fashioned way. Handshakes, business cards, someone waving a checkbook like it's 1998. John is already building a sign-up sheet on his tablet. Sophie is spinning a logo idea on a cocktail napkin. Elena pockets the pawn again. It's warm now. Then the AV tech jogs over, eyes wide. You might want to see this, he says, flipping his tablet toward them. The stream's chat is exploding, not just with claps and crown emojis, but with tags from big accounts, a local news channel requesting an interview, and a blue-check post from City Youth Chess will match the first 50K. Sophie's mouth falls open. That's real. Elena looks at the names flying past. The city suddenly smaller and larger at once. Possibility multiplies like variations on a board. Branching, elegant, terrifying. And then, from the vestibule, a child's voice. Ms. Elena? A boy in a too-big blazer peeks in, clutching a plastic chess knight. Juan stands behind him, protective. My mom cleans on the 3rd floor. She said I could ask, do you still teach on Saturdays? Elena crouches so they're eye level. I do, she says, the pawn pressing her palm. And we just got more tables. She glances up at Sophie and Whitmore, at Arturo and John, at the crowd that has, finally, decided what kind of room it wants to be. Bring your friends, she adds. We're only getting started. It starts with a folding table and a borrowed Sharpie. Saturday morning, Whitmore's ballroom looks nothing like a gala. No crystal, no string quartet, just rows of hand-me-down boards, a Costco tub of pretzels, and a cardboard sign Sophie lettered at 1 a.m. 3 moves ahead, free lessons, all ages. Arturo counts sets like a coach before tip-off. 30 boards, 60 chairs, extra clocks, we're legit. Juan wheels in a cooler. Water, juice, and I brought those little clementines. Kids demolish them. By 10, the front steps fill with strollers, hoodies, church clothes, soccer uniforms. City Youth Chess really did match the first 50K. Whitmore's accountant wired receipts before dawn, and John built a registration form that actually works. Elena tapes name tags, palms sweaty in the good way. A girl with pink headphones sidles up. Miss Elena? I watched your video like 12 times. Elena laughs. I still get nervous watching it once. The first lesson is noise and wonder. Elena starts them simple. The pawn walk, the knight's L, why we castle. Think in shapes, she says, and think in time. If your move doesn't help your next 2, it's probably helping your opponent. Sophie floats like a stage manager with a whistle. Bathrooms this way, snacks that way. If you drop a rook, it will survive. She kneels by a tiny kid gripping a queen like a microphone. That one moves like a diva, sweetheart. Big voice, lots of range. By noon, the ballroom hums with clicking pieces and small victories. The boy from the gala, David, blazer still too big, leans over a board, tongue tucked at the corner of his mouth. Walk me through your plan, Elena says. He points, shy but sure. I want to trade queens and attack with my rooks. Why? She asks. So his king has fewer friends. Elena grins. Good reason. When parents arrive, they don't just pick up, they linger. A mother in scrubs watches her son touch move like a surgeon. 2 teenagers who swore they were only here for the free snacks end up in a brutal rook endgame. A grandfather challenges Arturo and promptly regrets it. The room feels like something cities forget they can be. At 2, the news van noses up to the curb. The anchor, hair perfect, sleeves rolled, asks if Elena can talk on camera. Elena glances at Sophie. "You'll be great," Sophie says, then smirks. "And if not, we'll put you behind a cutaway with B-roll of pawns." They shoot by the windows where daylight makes halos of dust. "Why call it 3 moves ahead?" the anchor asks. "My dad's phrase," Elena says, eyes warming. "He taught me on a board made of bottle caps. Thinking ahead got us through a lot of months when rent didn't add up." The interview wraps on applause that isn't for the camera. It's for a kid who just found checkmate with a bishop he'd been ignoring. They're breaking down tables when the courier arrives. White envelope, heavy paper, too firm a knock. Sophie signs, eyebrows already rising. Elena peels the flap back and feels the temperature drop a few degrees. Temporary restraining order. Request for emergency hearing. John skims fast. Monroe Holdings petition to freeze charitable funds and enjoin use of their name or likeness in fundraising. Alleges ongoing campaign of defamation resulting in reputational damage and tortious interference. Hearing Monday at 9. "Can he do that?" Juan asks. "Anyone can file anything," Sophie says, jaw tight. "That part's easy." Arturo exhales through his nose. "So we show up." "Not alone," Whitmore says from the doorway. He's ditched the blazer for a Mets cap and work gloves. "My counsel will be there. I already called them after the tuxedo visit." Elena folds the letter. It isn't fear, exactly. It's that feeling before a complicated position. So many threads. One wrong move and the whole thing collapses. "He's trying to scare people off," she says. "Make donors think we're radioactive." "Then we tell them the truth," Sophie says. "Board by board, parent by parent. And we lock the funds in a dedicated 501c3 account. John?" "On it," he says, thumbs flying. "Also, PR judo. We don't say his name, we say ours. They work until the ballroom is a ballroom again, leaving just the taped sign and the faint sugar smell of clementines." Elena walks home because walking makes thoughts file themselves. The sky over the river is that February blue that looks paid for. Her phone buzzes every block. A teacher offering gym space, a barbershop asking if they can host weeknights, a DM from a grandmaster's assistant. Happy to do a Zoom for the kids. Her building smells like laundry and onion soup. On the second-floor landing, Mrs. Ruiz peeks out with curlers in. "Mija, I saw you on Channel 7. You looked like the mayor, but nice." Elena laughs. "If I were the mayor, I'd fix the lobby light." In her apartment, 2 rooms, 3 plants, 1 sagging bookshelf, she drops her bag, and the pawn she's been carrying lands on the table with a tiny, reassuring clack. She makes tea, texts her mom a heart, watches the news segment replay. The comments make her eyes sting in a way the lawyers didn't. The knock at 9:17 is gentle, like someone practicing courtesy. Elena opens to a woman in a slate coat, early 40s, eyes that have seen both sides of a courtroom. "Elena Vargas?" she asks. "I'm Dana Park. I used to clerk for Judge Levin. He's on Monday's calendar. I watched your segment. I don't know you, but I know bullies with stationery." She lifts a leather folio. "I drafted a motion to quash and a press statement in case you want to go loud. No charge. My kid learned to play in a library basement. This feels personal." Elena steps back to let her in. The apartment is small for 2, but courage, it turns out, doesn't need much square footage. They talk through strategy on the chipped table. "The hearing's about optics as much as law," Dana says. "Dress like you did today. Speak in stories. Judges are humans with clocks." What if he sends more? Elena asks. Not papers, pressure. He will, Dinah says. And you'll answer once, clean, then go back to work. Don't let him rent space in your head for free. At midnight, after Dana leaves, Elena sits in the quiet with her dad's phrase looping softly. Think 3 moves ahead. Move 1, lock the funds. Move 2, pack the courtroom with kids and parents in their Sunday best. Move 3, don't make it about him at all. Her phone buzzes again, unknown number. She almost ignores it. The text preview flashes, I shouldn't be doing this. Check your email. It's about Monday. She opens her inbox. 1 new message. Subject line, internal, Monroe Strategy Deck, confidential. Her finger hangs over the screen, heartbeat ticking like a clock in sudden time trouble. She scrolls faster. There's a list of targets. Whitmore, City Youth Chess, Arturo, Legacy Organizer, Co-opt or Discredit, Sophie, Messaging Node, and Elena Vargas, position as Performer, not Educator. Her phone buzzes. The unknown number again. I shouldn't be doing this, but you deserve a fair board. I'll text once more when I can. The sender ID is grayed out, masked. Elena stares at the deck, anger rising, then cooling into focus. Dad's voice again. Think 3 moves ahead. She screen shares the slides to Dana within minutes. Dana calls, no hello. Whoever sent this just handed us a ladder. We don't leak it, we use it to anticipate. If they plan donor pressure, we inoculate donors now. If they want to reframe, we keep our frame tight. Elena texts Sophie, John, Juan, Arturo, Whitmore. 10 minutes later, they're on a group video, faces in living rooms. Whitmore in that Mets cap, Sophie under a wall of sticky notes, John with a cattail swiping his mic, Juan in a Knicks hoodie, Arturo holding a chipped mug that probably dates to Bobby Fischer. Sophie whistles low when she sees the deck. They spelled my name right. I feel honored. Or hunted, Juan says. We flip it, Elena says. Move 1, call every donor before they do. Tell them the TRO is a scare tactic. Move 2, flood Monday's gallery with parents and kids. No chanting, no drama, Sunday best and quiet pride. Move 3, we keep the story about learning, not about him. Whitmore leans in. My counsel filed to transfer to Judge Levin's morning calendar. He's no fool. And I can underwrite bus rentals if you need them. We need them, Sophie says, already typing. And clipboards and tissues. Courtrooms are cold. Sunday is logistics wrapped in heart. John hardens the new 501c3 account and drafts an email donors can forward, where your dollars sleep at night. Sophie writes a 1-page court etiquette sheet. Stand when the judge enters. Phones silent. Let the work speak. Juan calls parents in Spanish and English, promises a seat if they bring a book for the ride. Arturo phones old chess pals with quiet influence. By dusk, a grandmaster replies he'll submit an amicus letter. Chess saved my life at 12. Do not chill the teaching of it. At 9 p.m., Elena meets Dana at a coffee shop that treats lawyers and musicians the same. Open late, extra espresso shots. Nobody asking why your eyes look like you lost a weekend. Dana slides over a printed motion and a second document. What's that? Elena asks. A declaration. Your words, under penalty of perjury. Not the viral moment. Your dad, the bottle cap board, the Saturday lessons. Judges read law. They remember stories. Elena writes slowly, then faster. The smell of burnt beans and bleach makes her think of closing shifts years ago. She signs, hands shaking in the good way. On her way out, her phone lights again. Parking garage under 5th and Main. On level B, space 72. Small black notebook in the rear wheel well. That's all I'll say. Dana reads it over her shoulder. Could be a trap. Could be the source, Elena says. They go together, because going alone sounds like dumb television. Level B is fluorescent lit, cameras blinking red, the air cold with winter concrete. Space 72 holds a dusty sedan, and yes, a wheel well with something wedged inside. Dana frees a palm-sized moleskin with gloved fingers. Inside, dense block printing. Monroe insists, double down, never apologize. If TRO fails, escalate. Complaint to AG about fraudulent solicitation. Thin. Paywall op-eds lined up. Talking points. Private property rights. Security risk. Side note, if Elena folds, offer NDAW cause nuisance settlement. Dana exhales. Not admissible the way we got it, but it maps their opening. More prep for us. Elena snaps photos, then tucks the notebook back where it was. She texted a single word to the mystery number. Received. Monday dawns, winter bright. The courthouse on Center Street wears a colonnade like a stern mother. By 8:40, the steps bloom with color. Little suits and scuffed Mary Janes, clip-on ties, puffer coats over church dresses. The kids carry books and a few carry boards, balanced like trays. A handmade sign appears. Critical thinking is not a crime. And Sophie frowns, gently lowers it. Inside voice today, buddy. In the gallery, Whitmore squeezes into the second row. Mets cap traded for an actual tie. Arturo sits aisle, ready to stand if his knees let him. Juan has tissues, just like he promised. Cameras hover near the door, barred from the pews. Lenses stare like eyes you can't please. Richard Monroe arrives at 8:58, sleek as a lacquered piano, flanked by 2 attorneys and one expression that says he still expects the world to move. He scans the crowd, sees the kids, hesitates half a beat. It is not the audience he ordered. Judge Levin takes the bench at 9:04. On calendar, Monroe Holdings V's 3 Moves Ahead Foundation. His glasses ride low. His voice carries queens under the robe. Counsel, appearances. Monroe's lawyer introduces himself with a pedigree that sounds like mahogany. Dana stands. Dana Park for respondent, Your Honor. With me is Ms. Elena Vargas. Levin nods at the gallery. You've brought half the city. Dana, our classroom, Your Honor. The plaintiff argues first. Words like irreparable harm, brand dilution, defamation by implication. He frames the gala as an event compromised by an invited interloper, and Elena as exploiting a moment for personal gain. The words hang neat and bloodless. Levin turns to Dana. Ms. Park? Dana rises, set and steady. Your Honor, Mr. Monroe's papers do not allege facts. They allege discomfort. An embarrassed host is not grounds to freeze a children's chess program. 3 Moves Ahead is a registered nonprofit with segregated accounts. Donors know exactly what they support. Free instruction that keeps kids learning on Saturdays. I submit Ms. Vargas's declaration, letters from parents, and a statement from Grandmaster Nora Liao regarding the public interest at stake. Levin leafs, scans, pauses. Ms. Vargas, step up. Elena approaches the mic. For a second, the room shrinks to the shape of a pawn on a bottle cap board. Good morning, Your Honor, she says. I teach kids to think ahead because my father taught me when rent and jobs didn't. On Saturday, 60 children learned their first castle. Some of their parents worked nights. They came anyway. Levin studies her. Do you fundraise off Mr. Monroe's name? I don't need his name, Elena says. The work sells itself. A murmur spreads like wind through tall grass. Levin taps his pen. "Mr. Monroe, step up." Monroe joins, jaw set. "Your Honor, my reputation is resilient, I'm sure," Levin says dryly. "But this court cares about standards. You want an injunction? Show me a statute the nonprofit violated or a misstatement of fact. You want to save face? Buy a mirror." Soft laughter ripples. The clerks don't smile, but their eyes do. Monroe's lawyer sputters about ongoing investigations, hints at an AG complaint. Levin lifts a hand. "Denied without prejudice," he says. "No TRO, no fund freeze. Parties are free to conduct themselves like adults outside my courtroom. Next case." The gavel is gentle, but the gallery's inhale is not. Kids squeeze each other's hands like they just survived a roller coaster. Sophie's exhale sounds like a tire-finding road. Dana scribbles next steps before anyone can cheer. In the hallway, microphones sprout like daisies. Sophie waves them off. "No victory laps," she mutters. "We go feed kids, then we talk." Monroe passes close enough for Elena to smell aftershave and something like worry. He doesn't look at her. His phone is already at his ear. "No, we escalate now." Outside, winter light makes everyone squint. Parents hug. Juan distributes clementines from his backpack, the courtroom snack he swears by. Whitmore leans on the railing, a grin tugging his solemn face. "You did good," he says. "We did smart," Elena answers. "Game's in the middle game now." Her phone buzzes again. Unknown number. They'll go to the Attorney General. They'll push fraudulent solicitation. Check their shell nonprofit, Monroe Youth Initiative. Board minutes from March. It's hollow. You didn't hear it from me. Elena pockets the phone, eyes on the kids cracking clementine peels like little suns. The next moves line up in her head. Compliance audit, proactive meeting with the AG's office, a Saturday class bigger than the last. Then Sophie stiffens, staring past Elena toward the curb. A black SUV rolls up slow. The back window slides down an inch. A voice Elena recognizes without wanting to say her name. "Elena," Richard Monroe calls, quiet enough that only she hears. "One game. No cameras. No crowd. You beat me again? I will sign a public apology and cut a check you can't spend in a year. You lose, you disappear. Best of 5. Dana's hand finds Elena's sleeve, a tiny anchor. Elena looks at the kids, at Whitmore, at the courthouse steps that still remember 1,000 verdicts. "Why would I let you choose the board?" she asks, voice even. Monroe's smile is thin. "Because you like fair." She feels her father's lesson, bright as a lamp. Fair doesn't mean foolish. She steps closer, lowers her voice. "I don't need you to apologize to build what we're building," she says. "But if you're offering a game, we'll play it our way. Saturday, Whitmore's ballroom, public, clocks, arbiter, 5 boards for 5 scholarships. Bring your best." The window pauses. A muscle twitches in Monroe's cheek. "You're overplaying," he says. "Maybe," Elena says, heartbeat steadying into a metronome. "Or maybe I'm just 3 moves ahead." The SUV idles, then pulls away into the bright, cold noon, leaving behind a challenge, a crowd, and the faint click of 100 small minds already setting up the board. The kind of week that tastes like battery acid. Calls, filings, carpools, pizza boxes stacked like textbooks. Elena sleeps in 10-minute slices and wakes with openings mapped behind her eyelids. Saturday's match is set. Public, timed, 5 boards for 5 full-ride scholarships to her program. Win the majority, Monroe signs a public apology and funds the scholarships. Lose, she vanishes from his orbit by court-stipulated non-contact. Clean terms, Whitmore's lawyers made sure. Whitmore's ballroom transforms by Wednesday night. The chandeliers dim warmer, velvet ropes herd pressed to a riser, and a raised platform holds 5 identical tables. Green felt, digital clocks, bright algebraic boards. A U.S. chess arbiter named Mrs. Dalrymple, retired math teacher, eyes like rulers, inspects every set and seals the clocks in evidence bags. "No nonsense," she says, pinning her badge. "I've tossed senators from scholastics. Don't test me." Sophie drafts the event one-pager, schedule, rules, code of conduct. "We call this a teach-in," she says. "It's bigger than scoreboards." John tests a live stream rig with a cheap PTZ camera and a laptop that wheezes like an accordion. "No copyrighted music," he mutters. "Please, God." The kids practice in clusters. 10-year-old Maya repeats night forks until her wrists ache. Kayvon, 12, learns to slow his hand before the clock. Elena circles like a coach and a mother and a metronome. Eyes first, hands second. Breathe at the capture, not after. She sets up a classic trap. If they give you a free pawn on move 2, ask why. Between drills, Elena rides the subway to Lower Manhattan with Dana to meet the Attorney General's Charities Unit. A glass table, legal pads. A woman in a burgundy blazer whose poker face could win nationals. Dana opens a binder. 3 moves ahead. Accounts, receipts, board minutes, segregation of restricted funds. Elena speaks softly about bottle cap boards and Saturday parents on graveyard shifts. The official skims, nods once. Preliminarily, you're in good standing. If we receive a complaint, we'll ask for this again. Be ready. Don't fundraise off any single person's name. Keep it about the kids. Outside, Dana exhales a cloud into the cold. "That's an almost blessing," she says. "Guard your flank." The anonymous number pings that night. They hired a prep team. Grandmaster EM running simulations. Watch for the Albin counter-gambit surprise on board 1. Elena Googles the line on her couch. Cat tired, coffee gone cold. She texts Arturo, "Prep a file on Albin traps." He replies with a photo of a yellowed magazine and a thumbs-up emoji he uses like punctuation. Rumors sprout. A blogger posts that the arbiter once donated to Whitmore's museum gala. Sophie counterposts a receipts thread. She also ticketed Whitmore's nephew in 2009 for touching a knight during a scholastic round. No takebacks. Monroe's PR drops polished videos. Him touring a tutoring center, sleeves rolled, pointing at whiteboards. Comments are turned off. Juan calls just before midnight. Sophie got a call from a blocked number. Someone offered to help her find a new job if she sat the match out. Elena's whole body tense cables. "Is she okay?" "She laughed for a full minute," Juan says. Then she asked if they offered dental. Friday afternoon. Whitmore walks in with 2 pastry boxes and a shy smile the size of the Hudson. "Fuel," he says, setting down cannoli. He looks around at the clocks, the seating charts, the taped-down camera cables. "You built a world in here." Elena touches the closest board like it might hum. "We'll see if it holds." Night. The ballroom empty except for the platform under ghost light. Elena stays with Sophie and John to run one more tech test. The PTZ camera lags, then stabilizes. Chat boxes ping in testing mode. "Can we get eval bars?" John snorts. "They'll live." Her phone buzzes. Unknown. Tomorrow he'll try to argue optics. Claim 5 boards favors you because you coach multiples, not one-on-one. Have the arbiter certify he chose the format. He did. Elena types back, "Who are you?" The bubble pulses, then vanishes. No reply. Saturday. Blue sky cold. The lobby smells like citrus polish and nerves. Parents arrive early, kids in pressed polos and borrowed blazers. Mrs. Dalrymple sets her stopwatch by the digital clocks and announces, 15 minutes per side, 5-second increment, touch move enforced. Any interference and the interfering party is removed. Got it? The room choruses, yes, ma'am. Richard Monroe arrives at 10:02 in a graphite suit, no tie, the look of a tech titan who read about magnanimity in a magazine. Behind him, 2 men push a sleek case. Inside sit ebony pieces that gleam like pianos. He scans, sees the 5 boards, laughs once. Stacking? Cute. Mrs. Dalrymple taps her badge. Format agreed in writing. You signed. Sit down, Mr. Monroe. He sits. The hush rolls in. A beachfront wave before it breaks. Cameras blink red along the back wall. The first board faces Elena. Board 2 holds Maya. Board 3, Kevon. Board 4, Jasmine with her hair in a bun so tight it looks aerodynamic. Board 5, Arturo himself, a last-minute wildcard who insisted, let an old dog bark. Sophie squeezes Elena's shoulder. No speeches, she whispers. Just moves. Elena meets Monroe's eyes. He smirks. She doesn't. Mrs. Dalrymple raises her hand. Players, start your clocks. The ticks begin. On board 1, Monroe slams out D4, E5, the Alban counter-gambit, just as warned, a fanged smile in pawn form. Elena feels the old heat in her chest. The one before fear becomes focus. She breathes and nudges DXE5, already mapping the landmines. Lasker trap, Alapin sidesteps, where his queen loves to bite. Board 2, Maya plays with textbook patience. Board 3, Kevon's leg bounces like a drum under the table. He plants his foot, finds center control. Board 4, Jasmine smiles at a cheap pin like someone handed her a joke she's heard. On move 6 at Elena's board, Monroe leans back, relaxed, like the opening is a script and he owns the rights. He reaches and stops. A thin, insistent buzz fills the air. The live stream hiccups, the ceiling speakers pop, and every digital clock flashes 0.0 for a breathless second before rebooting. The room inhales as one. Mrs. Dalrymple's jaw tightens. Hands away from pieces! John looks pale behind the camera. We just lost the UPS. Grid flicker. The house lights stutter, regain brightness. The clocks return. But 3 of them now display wrong times. Elena's among them, shaved by almost a minute. Monroe lifts a brow, all innocence. Technical issues, he murmurs. What a pity. Mrs. Dalrymple strides up, checks seals, snaps photos, announces, we will restore times from score sheets. Any dispute goes to me. She looks at Elena. You've got notation? Elena holds up her pen. Every move. Monroe spreads his hands like a saint in a painting. So do I. Sophie's whisper is a thread. They're not playing just on the board. Elena nods without looking up. She resets the clock to the arbiter's number, presses hers, and hears, as clear as if he stood beside her, her father's voice. This is where people break. You don't. Across 5 boards, 30 pieces wait like held breath. Elena slides her bishop along a long, dark diagonal, the quiet move that ignores his bait and starts building a net. And from the corner of her eye, she catches it. One of Monroe's prep team texting under the table to a man at board 3. Mrs. Dalrymple pivots like radar. Sir, she says, voice flat and final. Put the phone on the table and back away from my boards. It's the kind of hush that only happens after a thunderclap. Glasses midair, shoulders tight, everyone waiting for the next strike. Elena doesn't blink. Her palm rests light on the table, the way her dad taught her at their chipped kitchen counter in Boyle Heights. Steady the hand, steady the mind. Across from her, Richard Mounce dabs his forehead with a monogrammed napkin like it's a shield. Double or nothing, he'd barked a minute ago, voice too bright. Now his eyes keep skittering over the board, hunting miracles and finding corners. Play the position, Elena says softly, mostly to herself. A murmur ripples through the ballroom. Mr. Belmont, the homeowner and de facto referee, stands a few feet back, arms folded, a host who's realized his party has turned into a public hearing. Sophie, in a slate blue dress and practical flats, edges closer behind Elena's chair. John, the security guard who tried to shoo her away at the start, lingers near a pillar wearing the look of a man reconsidering his job description. Richard breaks the silence first, moving a pawn like a battering ram. He's not playing chess anymore. He's negotiating with gravity. Elena exhales, threads her knight through a small square of daylight, and pinpricks his center. It isn't flashy. It's fatal later. Coincidence, Richard says too fast. Pattern, replies Mr. Archer, gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, who once ran Saturday tournaments at East LA Parks. He didn't announce himself when he arrived, but the moment he spoke earlier, 3 people whispered, "Oh, that Archer." He leans in now, voice even. "That's a textbook deflection, Mr. Mounce. You missed the tension on the file." Elena hears her father's voice like a radio under the noise. "Don't chase pieces, chase the story." "What's Richard telling you?" Desperation dresses loud. She resists an easy capture and slides her bishop back instead, a quiet diagonal that looks shy until you see what it opens. Sophie's hand brushes Elena's shoulder, a tiny anchor. "I see it," she whispers. He doesn't. Richard laughs. The brittle laugh rich men use when the waiter brings the wrong vintage. "You folks really think she's got me? I trained with a grandmaster in Miami." "Then you should know better than to castle into a storm," Sophie says, surprising herself. A few guests chuckle. Others don't dare. Power has a long tail. Richard lunges with his rook, banging the piece hard enough to rattle crystal. "Clock's ticking," he sneers. "There is no clock," Mr. Belmont answers, dry as dust. "There's just the truth." Elena studies the ruins of his attack, then places her queen on a square that looks ordinary. It's a seatbelt click. Nothing dramatic happens, and yet the room tilts a degree. Lines connect. Ladders appear. Mr. Archer's brows lift. "Trap," someone whispers. "Net," Archer corrects. "Traps you spring once, nets you tighten." Richard tries to bluster his way out, piling threats on the wrong side of the board. Each time, Elena answers with the cheapest currency in chess: time. A check that pushes his king back 1 square, another that forces a single reply. She isn't hunting the knockout. She's bleeding his options. He leans in close, voice low and sour. "Say you resign. I'll see you're taken care of." Elena looks him in the eye. "My dad used to fix cars for cash. The only taken care of we ever believed in was rent paid on the first." A ripple of applause, quick and guilty. You're not supposed to clap at rich men's parties for the wrong people. Richard's smile collapses. He shoves a pawn, the wrong pawn, opening a window he thinks he can climb through. Elena's rook slides across that new corridor and parks like a patrol car. Gasps. Now even those who don't play feel it. The king is breathing through a straw. "Mr. Mounce," Belmont says, not unkindly, "you can still concede with grace." "Grace is for winners," Richard spits, and hurls his knight in a wild fork that looks clever if you've had 2 martinis. Elena ignores the shiny fork and nudges a pawn 1 square. The kind of move only a person who has waited tables and counted tips understands. Inch by inch. Don't give back what you've earned. Sophie covers her mouth. Archer lets out the smallest whistle. John, the guard, actually smiles. Richard's jaw works. She's stalling. Elena's bishop lands on the long diagonal it's been eyeing for 7 moves. The diagonal that cut through speeches and threats and checks written on swagger. It hits with a soft click. The room goes museum quiet. Check, Elena says. Not loud, not gloating. Richard's king can step left, except her rook eats that square. He can step right, except her knight owns that too. He can block with a rook, but the block is a bandage on a bullet hole. Heads turn toward Archer. He nods once. Forced. Richard's mouth opens and closes, a fish flung onto marble. He tries the only block he has left, sliding his rook between the bishop and the king like a bodyguard. Elena doesn't even look at him now. She's watching the story finish writing itself. Her queen glides to a quiet square beside the pinned rook. It's surgical. It's merciful. It's a promise. I will end this clean. Somewhere a glass clinks against a table. Somewhere a phone starts recording again. Sophie's eyes shine. John straightens. Belmont lifts his chin. Richard finally sees it. All the squares he needed are gone. All the ladders he bought don't reach this window. He grips the edge of the table hard enough to blanch his knuckles. If you make that move, he whispers, I swear I will make your name mean nothing in this town. Elena thinks of bottle-cap pawns and a father who taught her that real names are carved by how you show up when someone tries to buy your silence. She meets Richard's stare, then looks down at the board, the only court she trusts tonight. She reaches for her queen, and as her fingers close on the cool crown, the ballroom doors swing wide with a bang. A familiar voice booms from the entryway. Hold it right there. The entire room turns as the cliff edge sharpens under everyone's feet. It's Belmont's voice, only heavier, older, carrying the kind of authority that makes rooms obey. But when heads swivel, it's not Mr. Belmont at the threshold. It's his father, Judge Malcolm Belmont, retired from the California Court of Appeal, straight-backed in a navy blazer, silver hair neat, eyes like lit steel. Hold it, he repeats, stepping inside with a cane he doesn't seem to need. No one touches that board. No one touches that player. Richard tries on a smirk. Judge, this is a private party. Then behave privately, the judge says without raising his volume. He looks to his son. Evan, are you host of record? Mr. Belmont, Evan, nods. I am. Then the house rules are simple, the judge says, moving closer to the table. Wagers offered publicly are promises. Promises made publicly are enforceable in the court of character, which, in Beverly Hills, is the only court anyone actually fears. A nervous ripple of laughter. Richard straightens, bluff reloading. We were joking. Ah, the judge says gently. Then you won't mind if the joke finishes itself. Elena hasn't moved her fingers from the queen. She meets the judge's gaze and finds no pity, only a clear lane. Continue. Richard leans forward, voice low as a hiss. This is harassment. I can end this party with one phone call. Son, the judge says without looking at him. In my experience, men who can end a party with one phone call seldom threaten to do it out loud. He turns to John, the guard. Young man, your duty is the safety of guests, not the vanity of hosts. If anyone lays a hand on this player, you'll escort the hand to the curb. John swallows, nods once. Yes, sir. Sophie steps closer to Elena's shoulder, A quick squeeze. Mr. Archer edges in too, careful to stay behind the rope of air around the table. "Position's winning," he murmurs, as if reassuring a skittish colt. "Don't rush the win. Make him feel every square close." Richard's jaw works. "You're all out of your minds." "Or finally in them," Sophie says. Elena lowers her eyes back to the board and breathes the way her father taught her when timing a lug nut. In on the reach, out on the turn. She rechecks everything. The bishop's diagonal is a beam. The rook stitches the back rank. The knight covers the flight squares like a bouncer with a list. Richard tries one last piece of theater, pushing back his chair with a screech. "Before she moves," he announces to the phones and diamonds, "I want the record to show she's been coached, crowded, and—" "Mr. Mounts," the judge interrupts, "the record will show you invited a cleaning staffer to your table to mock her, raised the stakes when you were losing, and threatened her livelihood when you ran out of ideas. If you like, I'll have a court reporter transcribe the videos being taken right now." He gestures lazily to a dozen raised cameras. "Shall we spell your name with or without the D?" A few guests lose the battle not to laugh. Richard goes scarlet. Elena moves her queen. It's not the crash she imagined as a kid, slamming a bottle cap queen onto a peeling checkerboard. It's a soft, declarative click that hangs in the air like a verdict. The room inhales. Archer tilts his head, admiring the geometry the way some men admire a vintage Porsche. "Threat," he murmurs. "2, maybe 3. Richard blinks at the position, as if someone swapped the board while he blinked. He pushes a pawn, then stops, hand hovering. Illegal. His king is in a net, and the pawn does nothing but widen the hole. "Don't touch it," the judge says evenly. "Play correctly, or concede." A spasm runs through Richard's jaw. He grabs the only block left, shoving a rook between queen and king like a valet parking a Bentley across a fire lane. Sophie exhales. "That's desperate." "Optimistic," Archer says, almost kind. "And losing." Elena's hand doesn't tremble. She advances her king one square. No drama, no fireworks. She just tucks him off a check that only existed for people who dream at night about counters. It's the kind of move poor folks understand. Protect what feeds you while you finish the job. A murmur runs the length of the room. Even the non-players feel the shape harden. Richard looks up, past Elena, past the judge, past the cameras, looking for the old invisible scaffolding of his life. The calls returned, the favors owed, the nods and doors and grins. Nothing answers back. He snatches his remaining rook and hurls it across the rank, daring some miracle fork. "Careful," Archer says softly. "That's the one that loses by force." Elena's bishop glides, long and patient, to the square it's been promised since move 12. The diagonal becomes a coast-to-coast freeway. Richard's king is boxed in by his own luxury. "Check," Elena says, barely above a whisper. He tries to step right. The knight bars it. Left. The rook bars it. Forward is a fantasy. Backward is a memory. He reaches for a pawn like a life preserver. "Illegal," John says before the judge can, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. "King's in check. You have to address the check, sir." The sir lands heavier than it should. Richard trembles. This is rigged. She's... He looks at Elena, searching for a crack. "You think this earns you a seat at my table? You think these people will keep clapping next week when the invitations dry up?" Elena lifts her eyes. "I don't need your table," she says. "I've got one at home with wobble legs and coffee rings, and conversations at that table never required a RSVP." A laugh, an honest one, rolls from the back of the room and starts to multiply. Richard slams his palm on the table. Pieces jump. The queen tilts, but doesn't fall. Mr. Belmont steps in. Enough. The judge doesn't raise a hand. He doesn't have to. Mr. Mounts, you have two options any player can respect. Find a legal move or tip your king. Richard's breath saws. He chooses the only legal bandage left, sliding a minor piece into the bullet's path. It's a delay measured in seconds. Archer looks at Elena, then at the board. You already earned this, he says softly. Now take it. She places her rook with the same care she used to place a glass on a tray when the restaurant was slammed. Flat, quiet, centered. The last exit disappears. Phones tilt higher. Sophie's fingers lace. John's chin rises. The judge's eyes soften. Just a hair. Richard sees it. He sees all the square miles of escape he lived off for years shrink to nothing. He opens his mouth to roar, and the ballroom lights snap to half. The sound system thumps alive, and a velveted voice booms from the DJ booth. Ladies and gentlemen, before our finale, a brief announcement from our sponsor. Every head jerks to the mezzanine. A woman in a blazer with the logo of a major news network steps to a mic, flanked by a cameraman. We've been live for the last 5 minutes, she says, tone bright, eyes sharp. And we've just received confirmation. Mr. Richard Mounts is under active investigation by the State Labor Commissioner for wage theft and retaliation. Mr. Mounts, care to comment? Before or after checkmate? The room detonates into gasps. Elena keeps her eyes on the board. Her hand rises. Her queen begins to move. It's the kind of silence that rewires a room the instant before thunder. Elena doesn't look at the reporter, the phones, or the guests clutching their pearls like talismans. She looks at squares. She counts breath, and she lands the queen with a soft, irrevocable click. Checkmate, she says. The word travels like a flare. Gasps ripple up the staircase, over the balcony, through the tangle of tuxedos and sequins. Mr. Archer exhales a laugh that sounds suspiciously like relief. Sophie's hands fly to her mouth. John, the guard, straightens, as if his spine finally found its purpose. Richard stares at the board as though it betrayed him. No, he mutters, shaking his head. No, there was interference, Judge Belmont taps his cane once. Son, the only interference here is between your ears. You are mated. Take the lesson with whatever dignity you can salvage. The reporter leans into the mic. Mr. Mounts, in addition to tonight's on-camera wager, sources confirm your companies are under active investigation for wage theft and retaliation. Comment? A low, hungry murmur rolls across the ballroom. The crowd isn't on his side anymore. It's a jury that already knows the verdict. Elena rises slowly. She doesn't gloat. She doesn't bow. She extends her hand across the table because that's what players do, whether they're in borrowed heels or beat-up sneakers. Richard doesn't take it. Pay the woman, Mr. Belmont says, host's voice firm and public. You offered $100,000 in front of witnesses. Richard barks a humorless laugh. You think I'm transferring 6 figures to a maid? It's not a thought. It's a requirement, the judge replies. Consider this the court of reputation. Payment now, on camera. Phones lift higher. Richard's bravado deflates into something smaller and uglier. He digs out his phone with trembling fingers, thumbs flying. Fine, he spits. Send me your account. Elena opens the low-end smartphone she bought second-hand. the screen a spiderweb of tiny scratches. Sophie nudges in, quietly steady. "I'll help you verify it," she whispers. 30 seconds becomes a lifetime. Then, ping. Elena's banking app flashes a number she's never seen next to her name. Her throat tightens, not from greed, never from that, but from the sudden lightness of all the bills that won't crush her mother next month. Mr. Archer clears his throat. Before we all forget ourselves, this is also a record. He turns, voice carrying. No one here will later say this didn't happen. We saw arrogance challenge humility, and humility win clean. Applause breaks, real and rough. Someone cheers, another whistles. A cluster near the bar starts clapping in rhythm until the whole room has to pick a side. It already has. Richard tries one last angle. "You think this buys you a seat, Elena? Tomorrow I make a few calls, and you're blacklisted from every house on this hill." Elena meets his eyes, steady as a level. "Then I'll build my own hill." The judge's mouth twitches, half admiration, half warning at Richard. "Mr. Mounts, you're finished here. Evan?" Mr. Belmont steps beside the judge, host hat on, billionaire warmth turned to ice. "Effective immediately. You're barred from my events and my network. My friends can decide for themselves, but I suspect they like being photographed, applauding decency more than cruelty." That lands. You can hear it in the way a dozen guests suddenly become very interested in not making eye contact with Richard. The reporter senses the current and dives. "Ms. Alvarez," she says to Elena, "would you say this is about more than a game?" Elena glances at Sophie, at John, at Archer. She thinks of the wobble-leg kitchen table, of bottle cap queens, of her father's voice over the kettle. "Count 3 moves, kiddo, and then one more." She takes the mic the way she takes a piece, only when it matters. "It's about work," she says, voice even. "The kind you can't see on a resume. Patience, self-respect, not mistaking money for merit. People like me clean your floors and fill your glasses, but we also read and study and teach our kids to think for themselves. Tonight, all I did was play my game and not look away when someone tried to make me small." The room answers with a standing wave. Not the polite golf kind, the kind that starts in the chest and forces the hands to move. Even the DJ forgets to cue anything. For a beat, all they can do is make noise. Mr. Belmont raises a palm and the sound softens. "Elena," he says, less host now and more neighbor, "my staff told me you hold free chess lessons in your apartment's laundry room on Sundays. If you want a bigger room, I have one. I'll underwrite a weekly community night here. Boards, books, snacks, your program, your rules." Elena blinks. The number on her banking app is still burning a hole in her pocket. And now this. Her voice catches. She swallows. "I don't want charity. I want partnership." "Good," the judge says. "Charity is what people hand down to feel tall. Partnership is what equals build." "Then partner with me," Mr. Belmont replies, smiling for the first time all night. "We'll call it 3 moves ahead." Sophie whoops. Archer laughs. John actually claps above his head. Richard can't stand it. "You're all out of your minds," he snarls. She played a parlor trick. You're turning it into a movement. "Movements start with moments," the reporter says, not bothering to hide her delight. "And you, sir, just gave one away." Security edges near, not rough, not threatening, just decisive. Mr. Belmont nods at them, then at Richard. "Time to go." Richard looks around for a friendly face and finds only phones. He shoves back from the table, bumping a chair, sending a pawn skittering underfoot. No one stoops to pick it up for him. The doors absorb him and close without ceremony. The air changes. Shoulders drop. People laugh the way you laugh when the tornado misses your house by a block and you're allowed to feel lucky again. The DJ, finally remembering his job, lets a gentle Motown track ride under the chatter. Archer leans in, conspiratorial. "You know the best part?" he says to Elena. "You didn't just win a game, you won a witness. That's rarer." Sophie hands Elena a glass of water. "Sip, champ." Elena sips. The cool hits every place her nerves once lived. "I still have a shift at 6 a.m., she murmurs, half to herself. "Maybe," Sophie says, eyes glinting, "but maybe not for long." The reporter lowers her voice. "One more, off the mic. What's the first thing you'll do with the money?" Elena looks at the board, at the king turned on its side, at the queen that landed where her father taught her queens belong, within reach, never above. "Fix the wobble on our table," she says. "Then buy more tables." Judge Belmont chuckles. "That, Ms. Alvarez, is policy disguised as poetry." Mr. Belmont gestures toward the mezzanine. "Give us 5 minutes. I want to introduce you to the foundation director." As they move, John falls into step on Elena's other side. "For what it's worth," he says, voice rough, "if anyone ever tries to push you around again, you call me." "I will," Elena says, meaning it. They reach the stairs, and a figure peels from a column's shadow, face pale, jaw set. Richard? No. A younger silhouette in a tailored suit, eyes a colder version of the same. He blocks the first step with a smile that isn't a smile. "Congratulations," he says smoothly. "I'm Ryan Mounts, Richard's son." The crowd's hum buckles. Sophie's grip tightens on Elena's elbow. The judge's eyes narrow, calculating. Ryan's gaze flicks to the reporter's camera, then back to Elena. "My father loses loudly," he says. "I prefer winning quietly." He slips a card toward her. "Let's talk. There are ways tonight could be reframed." Elena doesn't take the card. "It's late," she says, meeting him square. "And I'm done being reframed." Ryan's smile thins. "Then we'll see each other in venues less friendly." The card hangs in the air like an unfinished threat. The DJ's track flips. The reporter lifts her mic on instinct. Security shifts weight, waiting for a nod. And at the top of the stairs, under the chandelier that started this whole circus, Mr. Belmont's foundation director, sharp, kind, unblinking, raises a hand and calls down, "Elena, are you ready to build something bigger than tonight?" It's amazing how a room decides who it wants to be. 1 second, the chandelier is just light. The next, it's a signal flare for a new order. Elena keeps her eyes on the stairs, not on Ryan's business card hovering like a blade. "I'm done being framed by anyone else," she says, steady. Judge Belmont shifts his cane, a small thunderclap in a quiet court. "Mr. Mounts," he says to Ryan, "tonight is closed record. Take your card and your tone outside." Ryan studies the faces, phones, frowns, the reporter's red light, and calculates. He slides the card back into his pocket, smile cooling to frost. "Enjoy the halo," he murmurs to Elena. Cameras turn. "They also remember," Sophie answers, slipping between them like a rook. "We'll help." Mr. Belmont's foundation director, a woman in a navy suit with a posture that reads yes and a gaze that reads not yet, waves from the mezzanine. "Elena, let's talk terms while the air's still warm." Upstairs, the music thins to a hum. Papers appear as if the mansion grows them. A draft MOU, a 1-page budget, a calendar grid for Sundays. The header reads, 3 moves ahead. Community, chess, and mentoring. Elena runs a fingertip over the letters like they might wipe off. No charity, she reminds them. Partnership, the director says. You lead, we fund. We also hire you to design and run it. Salary, benefits, you set the rules. Open to everyone, no dress codes, no donors cutting the line. Elena exhales, a laugh tucked inside it. Then add this. Facility staff get first dibs on the kids' slots. Housekeepers, cooks, guards. If they want their kids here, they're in. Done, the director says, pen already moving. Archer leans on the railing, grin lopsided. And I'll match the first 50 boards and clocks. Used to hustle speed games in Washington Square. I owe the game. Judge Belmont taps his cane again. One more clause. A defense fund. If anyone tries to retaliate against Miss Alvarez or any staffer who participates, our counsel is on retainer. The director nods. Already building that line item. They sign, not like a miracle, more like a plan you could hammer together in a garage. When Elena's pen lifts, the room below breaks into applause again, as though it felt the ink dry. The reporter catches them halfway down the stairs. Quick on camera closer? Elena nods. The mic floats up. Tonight, she says, a lot of people saw a game. I saw a table where people who don't get invited could sit down and think out loud. We're building that table for real. If you've ever been told to know your place, come find a new one. Sunday nights. Free. Bring your brain. It lands. The cheer isn't fancy. It's hungry. John, the guard, wipes an eye with the back of his sleeve and tries to turn it into a cough. By Monday, the clip lives everywhere. The transfer receipt, the checkmate, the line about building a hill, stitched, duetted, subtitled. A local sports bar runs it with the sound on. A PTA group emails the mansion asking about youth nights. Someone posts a photo of a wobble-leg kitchen table captioned, Mine, too. Ryan's promise of venues less friendly flickers at the edges. Anonymous emails, a snide column about Cinderella with a coach. But the Foundation's counsel replies in plain English, and the internet replies in louder English. Meanwhile, the city's labor bureau announces a review of Mount's group practices. Richard's name starts to trend for reasons he doesn't like. Sunday arrives with rain, the kind that smells like pennies. The ballroom doesn't look like the place Elena was humiliated in. It looks like a public library on a snow day. Folding tables, loner boards, a line at the cocoa urn. Mr. Archer teaches a crew of fourth graders the night's tour. Sophie checks people in with a clipboard and a smile that could talk a hurricane into sitting down. John patrols the edges, not as a bouncer, but as a guardian. An old man in a tweed cap sets down a battered vinyl roll and whispers, "Haven't played since my brother shipped out." A nurse in scrubs hands her kid a banana and says, "One game, then homework." A dishwasher from the mansion's caterer brings his teenage niece and asks, shy, if there's a beginner's table. There is. Elena made sure. She walks the rows like a quiet current, kneeling to eye level, borrowing memories for metaphors. Your pawns are the people who trust you. Don't throw them away out of panic. This fork is just a question with two bad answers. Ask it kindly. Breathe on move 4. You don't win on move 4. Halfway through the night, a little girl with braids taps Elena's sleeve. "Miss Elena, my bishop keeps getting trapped." "Let's give him better roads," Elena says, rearranging pawns into clean diagonals. See, sometimes respect is just making space. Phones record that line. It will end up on a mural before summer. Between games, Elena slips into the kitchen. The staff pauses, uncertain. This room has its own history. But she smiles and rolls up her sleeves. "I'm not here to inspect," she says, tying an apron. "I'm here to pour cocoa." Mrs. Alvarez, her mother in a thrift store cardigan, and the same hands that once scrubbed other people's floors, takes 2 cups, eyes shining. "We should fix the table tonight," she murmurs. "We will," Elena says, "and buy 3 more." Later, when the last rook clicks back into the last box and the vacuum hum chases the echo from the corners, Archer stacks chairs while Sophie counts sign-ups. Judge Belmont leaves a note that reads, "In lawyer script, you won a witness, but you also built a record. Good work." Outside, the rain has quit. The city smells like it forgave something small. Elena drives home in her dented hatchback because she likes the feel of the wheel in her hands. The $100,000 sits in an account labeled Seed, untouched except for boards, clocks, and a carpentry invoice. Kitchen table, repair and reinforce. In their apartment, the table no longer wobbles. She sets the old bottle cap queen her father carved on the center square. Her mother laughs softly. "You kept her." "She kept me," Elena says. The new program grows in the way good ideas do, sideways and messy and faster than the sign maker can keep up. A high school asks for a satellite night. A union hall donates space. A tech firm offers laptops. But Elena only accepts after they agree to send engineers to mentor, not just machines. The reporter returns with a cameraman, not for spectacle, but for a follow-up. "What does winning look like now?" she asks. Elena gestures to a room full of thinking faces. "Like this. Like kids learning to slow down. Like grown-ups remembering they're still allowed to." Weeks later, in a tournament gym that smells like sweat and pencil shavings, one of Elena's students, 10 years old, sneakers double-knotted, finds a mate in 3 and whispers, "Is it really there?" Elena doesn't touch the board. "Count it," she says. Click, click, click. "Checkmate," the kid breathes, then grins so hard the ribbon bites his neck. On the ride home, Sophie leans her head against the window. "You know this is bigger than chess, right?" "I know it started there," Elena says, "and that's enough to keep me honest." It's late when they pull up to the apartment. A man in a suit stands by the stoop. Tired, undone, not dangerous. Richard. He looks smaller without a room to echo him. "I came to say I'm under review," he says, the words like gravel. "I also came to say that what you did on the board was clean. I don't know what to do with that yet." Elena nods once. "Start by playing fair with the people who work for you. If you can't do that, resign." He almost laughs. It turns into a cough. "You don't leave me many squares." "You had them all," she says gently. "You just never learned to see them." He leaves without bluster. No cameras, no threats, just a man with fewer excuses. Upstairs, Elena sets the bottle cap queen back on its square and opens a notebook. On the first page, she writes, in her father's voice, "Think 3 moves ahead, then make room for someone else to learn too." The city hums outside. The table doesn't wobble. And across town, under a chandelier that learned a new trick, a ballroom waits for Sunday, when a different kind of wealth shows up in hoodies and work boots, ready to play the longest game there is.